Risk management and the process used to evaluate risk. Many of you are going to be going into the residential or commercial real estate world, and by practice, for the most part, real estate agents are generally independent contractors, and the way you get paid, for most of you, is going to be by commission. And when you go from perhaps a world where you're used to being paid by the hour or by the week or every 2 weeks, going on commission is a whole different deal. So I would encourage you to have a plan for how you're going to deal with the risk of not having enough money to make it, through the month or whatever your monthly budget is. So thinking about how much money that you're going to need to make to cover all of your expenses, and the idea that, if I can't get a commission within the first month I'm working, then how am I going to pay those expenses? You might have a savings account. You might be living with somebody who can cover the expenses. You might have an outside job or something like that, or a part-time job, or you plan on doing real estate part-time, or whatever it is. You're going to increase your chances for success if you think about how I'm going to make it from point A now to point B living off commissions. And having that plan, that's risk management. Thinking about it ahead of time. And the industry of risk management has sort of boiled things down to maybe 4 different points that we're going to consider here in our program. The first one is maybe if there's a risk, I can avoid the risk. Now you can obviously see how this doesn't work for every situation, right? I want to be a real estate agent. I want to be a real estate licensee, so I'm not going to avoid the risk of doing so. Very good. But in some cases, you can avoid the risk. For instance, let's say that you're concerned about water hazards. You have young children, you don't want to be around water, so you're not going to look at homes with swimming pools. You might not want to be on the water's edge, whatever it might be. You're not going to go driving tonight because it's all snowy, icy, and very slippery. I'm not going to stay at home when the hurricane hits. You're avoiding the risk by removing the source of the risk. Okay, that's one way to do it. A great way for us, a great lesson for us to take away from this is, I'm going to stay in compliance. I'm going to do what my broker tells me to do. I'm going to not break the law. I'm not going to break the law on behalf of anybody else. I'm not going to not disclose something because a seller told me they don't want me to disclose it. If I'm bound to disclose it, I have to disclose it. I'm going to avoid that risk by following the laws and practices and the regulations of the state that I'm practicing real estate in. So avoiding risk is one way to manage risk. A second way is to just accept the fact that that risk exists and then have a plan in place for dealing with it if it should happen. By preparing for an emergency. Seatbelts, airbags, automobile accidents can happen. So if that happens, is there a way that we can control the damage? Installing sprinklers, for instance. Fire doors are required in commercial buildings. A fire door is a door that it can remain closed and it's beefed up enough that it'll keep fire at bay and won't come through the door. And you can get 20-minute doors, you can get 60-minute doors, etc. Security systems, locks and things of that nature, door locks and bolts and cameras and all that kind of stuff, this type of thing. So for real estate agents, it's become more and more important that we make sure we're taking care of ourselves. If we're going to go and show a property that's a vacant property and it's with somebody we've never known before, I've taught classes and I will continue to teach classes in how I can do this business and keep myself safe. I would suggest you never go and meet somebody that you've never met at a vacant property, especially at certain times of night. All right? So, have a plan. How am I going to activate? How am I going to run business in a safe manner? Around my marketplace, we have these electronic lock boxes. And the electronic box won't open after 8 o'clock at night. Boom, you can't get into a property after 8 o'clock at night. That's one way to control the risk, or you might say avoid the risk, all right? So avoid, control. Another way that you can manage risk is to try to transfer that risk to another party. And the simplest example of this is insurance. You buy a house, a homeowner buys a house, they have a risk that a tree might fall on it, storm damage might happen, the property might burn down. So they can shift that risk to another party. They're going to have to pay for it, and they buy an insurance policy. You might make an honest mistake as a real estate agent. And there's a thing called errors and omissions insurance that you can buy. Your brokerage might have policies that you can buy into, or you can buy it yourself directly, and that covers you to an extent if you make a mistake. It doesn't cover Skullduggery doesn't cover fraud and criminal activities, but it does cover mistakes, errors, and omission insurance. And that's transferring the risk to another. Another example in the real estate world is a landlord who owns property, and the property is metered, separately metered, and the landlord says, tenant, you pay the expenses. You pay for the gas, the heating, the oil, whatever the heating source is. You pay for the electricity. So how is that landlord transferring risk? Well, if the cost of that energy product goes up, it's not the landlord's issue, it's the tenant's issue. The landlord has transferred the risk to another. And our fourth one is to retain. In some cases, you can just make sure you understand there's something that's a risk, and you decide that, it's my position where I'm at, we're okay with this risk, and we're not going to do anything to counter it. We're just going to decide that the chances of the event occurring are too small for me to justify any type of response. Maybe you're a runner, and it's raining out, and I don't know if it's snowing out or something like that, and you say, you know what, I'm okay. I don't think I'm going to slip and fall when I run. But I understand there's a risk there, and that's the idea. I understand there's a risk when I jump in my car and I come in here to work, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. So those are the idea, the four different things we've got to manage risk. And the idea is, even with the retain, you might be thinking, well, why is that a risk management thing? The idea is you're aware of the risk. All right, that's the key, is to think about it. Why didn't we see this coming? You hear that a lot in business. How could this happen? Why didn't we see this coming? All right, so your different options are to avoid the risk, to kind of control the risk, to transfer the risk, or retain the risk. And we've got a cute little acronym here, ACTOR. ACTOR, you can be an actor to lessen risk. You can act to lessen risk. Avoid, control, transfer, or retain.